Hello, Scream Demons, and welcome to the Screams from the Basement podcast with Sam and Casey. I am one of your co-hosts. I am Casey.
And I'm Sam. Let's get screaming.
And this episode, we are screaming because our guest is no stranger to the world of Charles Band's Full Moon universe, having written the screenplay for such films as Puppet Master 3, Dr. Mordrid, and Lurking Fear.
Returning to the world of Full Moon for the first time in the Pulp Noir series and the 400th film from producer Charles Band is the screenwriter of Quadrant, C. Courtney Joyner. Welcome to the show, Courtney. Welcome to the show, Courtney. How are you doing? How are things going?
Oh, things are going great. The movie's coming out here very shortly, and I wasn't there, but the reports from the reaction in Chicago at Flashback and everything else have been really positive. So that's great, because you just don't know how folks are going to react, especially when you're kind of going down a different track. And that's definitely what we're doing with this one.
Yeah. So the movie we're talking about is Quadrant. And if people have listened to our interview with Charles Band, he kind of mentioned that at the end this is the start of the Pulp Noir series. And so first of all, let's come to the first question. Quadrant. What is this movie? What is Quadrant about?
You may be asking the wrong guy.
Here's the better question. What did Charlie pitch this movie on to you?
Oh, okay. Well, I was down at the office, and Charlie wanted to talk about perhaps starting a new line and all that stuff, and that was Pulp Noir. And some of the titles in the projects had gone back a few years, and we were just talking, and Quadrant it came up, and we started talking about films that he had liked so much years ago, but that had not, you hadn't seen anything like it in a while. And so we were, the Ken Russell picture, the Patty Chayefsky, Altered States. That was a biggie for him. And also because of the incredible Dick Smith makeup and stuff. So we were just kind of horsing around about that. And I knew that he wanted to do something that had an AI component to it, but just like he had done that movie Amy, but not something that, if you will, was a replacement for physical effects or things like that. And could it be organic to the storyline? So this idea of the Quadrant, with this Quadrant helmet that you put it on, and it then transports you mentally into a world where your fears take on physical reality for you, and gives you a chance really to battle them and destroy them and get them out of your life, and you'll no longer be tortured mentally by them. And it can be something as extreme as that, or, I always wanted to punch that guy in the nose when I was in third grade, and Quadrant gives you that opportunity also. But what happens is they have a patient, and this is all very backstreet medicine. The guy's kind of a semi-quack who's invented this thing, even though it works and what have you. And they have a young woman who comes in who claims to be haunted by Jack the Ripper. And the fact is, they put her in the Quadrant helmet, and she takes a trip back to London of the 1880s. But the whole thing is that the doctors don't know she's not haunted by anything. She's completely turned on by it and wants to commit those same crimes. And Quadrant gives her the opportunity to do it. And then things get really out of control.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, the concept of this is so cool. I love the incorporation of the AI into the storyline. Like, it feels like it fits a purpose. When you were writing this, was Jack the Ripper always going to be a part of it, or was that something that came along later?
Oh no, that was that afternoon. That was my thing when we started talking about, okay, what kind of people are going to use Quadrant. So here's the deal. A million years ago, and I in and out of, working with Charlie and all that stuff, I was over at the old office and I met the director, Peter Sasdy, and he had made the Hammer film Hands the Ripper. And I started thinking about that. I hardly got to. I had a good friend who later interviewed him for a Blu-ray, and I got him to sign a Taste the Blood of Dracula lobby card, which was very nice. But I came that the Jack the Ripper just hit me like a hammer on the head, no pun intended, and there it was. And I came back, and Charles like, "Huh, okay, let's try that," and that's what I did. So it was, so the little pieces were kind of floating in front of me, and then I had to put them all together and see if they would work out, and they did. And one thing too about Quadrant that really goes kudos to Charlie is we both wanted to do something that, as he said, kind of darker and more intense and things like that than maybe normal full moon product, but also, if you will, a bit of a throwback to 1974, to the house that screamed, or the vampire lovers, or something that that kind of explicitness and the gore and the sexuality and the things, they've kind of backed away from that. I think horror movies have gotten a little timid in those areas. Now, of course, there's just, exploitation items when those movies were made, but they just went full bore for it, especially some of the Italo Spanish stuff. And that's what we wanted this to feel like.
Nice.
Yeah, you guys definitely have captured that, because I know firsthand how much Charlie adores Italian cinema, and there's definitely sprinkles of that. And what I loved of what you guys did in this is you took that inspiration, Jack the Ripper, 70s cinema, heck, even 90s full moon, with, because Charlie mentioned like Castle Freak being one of them, and some of the kind of the darker movies, I guess, of full moon of the 90s. But then you took, like we said, that modern spin on it. You added AI. Was that always going to be a part of, was AI always going to be part of this story? And like, hey, maybe this is a way how we modernize this movie for a modern audience. Because
of the idea of what this helmet was going to do, and we kind of hashed that around. And Chuck Serino had worked with Charlie in the AI forum a few times. And he was the very first person that I sat down with before I wrote the script, because one of the things, certainly when you work for either Full Moon or whatever, Roger Corman or whatever company you're working for, it's always better to write for the money.
Yeah.
Rather than do something that's so expansive or whatever, it can't be done, and you're scrambling to figure out compromises. So I sat down with Chuck, we discussed the story, and something I pitched to him immediately was the idea of using that actual crime scene photograph, which is one of the very first crime scene photographs ever taken of that victim of Jack the Ripper, Mary Kelly. And what he did to her is just unfathomable. It's so savage. And Chuck said, that's a great idea. Let's I wanted to integrate our Quadrant, the patient into that world, but let's use actual backgrounds and things like that were real to that world. And that horrible photograph is very much real to that world. What I did not know, we thought this was going to be very cool, and this was Chuck added to it, was not only is she in that photograph, but the photograph, as you know, the blood has been colorized. And that's all they did with that picture. It's that black and white, but with the blood. So when you see that thing, and it's like, oh my God, that's real. That's, that's actually, they just turned what was a black and white image into color for the blood splatter around that little hovel where she was living. And so you see just how horrible the Ripper crime really is.
Yeah, that's gnarly. That's a rough picture.
It is. Yeah. It really is. But once we decided on that kind of approach and the use of the black and white, and then with the splashes of color in it and all that stuff. And this is her Quadrant experience, not Robert's, which has the demons and what have you. Then we were really off and running. So I was integrating black and white and all that stuff into the script.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool.
Yeah, the use of, again, this is maybe more of a Charlie side of things on the directing side, but it's awesome to hear the black and white was written into the script. What does that look like on the script side of things? Like when you're writing that into it?
It's just a stage direction. And, Charlie has also expressed a lot of interest and desire to release some of the movies now in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And which I think is very cool. And also to, I'm sure, a little bit of an homage to his dad and the horror movies that Albert made, Face of Fire and I Bury the Living and those things. And so I think that's really neat. And of course, too, black and white gives an entirely different feel than color does. And if you're doing something with period sections to it, as we were, I think the black and white immediately transports you to that era.
Absolutely.
And then suddenly, that blood kind of reminded me. Do you guys remember the Embassy Jack the Ripper movie that Jimmy Sangster wrote?
No, I can't say I have.
It's done about 1960. And the guy who's supposed to be the Ripper gets trapped in an elevator shaft, and the elevator comes down and crushes him. And the blood comes up through the floorboards of the elevator, and that's the only red in the movie. The movie's in black and white, and then this red spreads across the floor.
That's awesome.
Amazing. Yeah.
That's so cool.
So there's our backdoor tribute.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
I have a question to follow up on something you said earlier, because you talked about working within your budget on writing the film. You've gotten to work with Charlie for many years over different companies. You worked with them during the Empire days, during the heyday of the Full Moon and the video store days, and of course now you're back with Quadrant. What has been that change? What has that change looked like? Working with him back 30 years ago versus now. How has the writing process, I guess, changed besides budgets?
I was going to say, do you mean the zeros on my paycheck? Yeah. No, I think that honestly, the difference really is just that there are limitations that maybe weren't there before, because the amount of money that was being spent was greater.
Yeah.
So that just means that if you take on one of these projects, that you understand those limitations and you just gear yourself towards, say, things like only a certain number of characters and a certain number of locations and that type of stuff. And also, too, what are you going to do special effects wise? And that was one of the things. Of course, we had the AI material in Quadrant and those great demons and all that stuff, but also all that practical stuff for the Ripper murders.
Yeah.
Now, I went to the screening for a lot of the cast and crew and got to see it on the big screen and the whole thing. And of course, I thought it looked wonderful. And the guy, the DP, Tom Calloway, is a very, very old friend of mine. So it was kind of a lovely reunion. But the moment when one of our characters, we won't reveal who, gets his throat slit, the audience, half these guys worked on that effect, went, oh my God, they were like, and I was too. This will sound like the weirdest statement probably you'll have today. The blood in this movie looks great.
Yeah, it
Yes.
does.
It really does. Because very often now you see it, it's like, oh, it's really too orange, or it's too this, or it's too that. And, you go with it because you're going with a story. But boy, I was impressed with the physical effects and the on-set effects that they did.
Yeah, it feels very like you were talking about homaging like the 70s Italian horror genre. And yeah, like there's the blood, specifically the shade of red that it is, and the consistency, like
Exactly.
the viscosity
Yes.
is so 70s in such a great way. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Their recolor timing, Warner Brothers was horrible with their blood, and it looked like orange paint.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the last time you have to see an original print of Dirty Harry to see this, and they've since retimed it so that it's red. Because
Nice.
whether it was Don Siegel's estate or whoever it was said,
Mhm.
guys, please. Even the Wild Bunch, which of course is a masterpiece and everything else, has that orange cosmetic look to the blood.
Yeah. Yep.
And,
Yeah, that's it's so, because we talked about the picture, the Jack the Ripper picture, and then the blood being added into it. And again, the black and white in contrast with this blood it looks incredible. Each kill sequence, I guess, looks like almost like a painting in just red, just blood red everywhere. It looks incredible.
It's Charlie working in concert with a director of photography who he knows very well. Tom knows Charlie very well. So they have great chemistry together. And I know Tom was very excited about this particular project, again, because it was outside the norm of what Full Moon, was kind of doing with the comedies and that type of thing. And, they shot it in Ohio. And Charlie told me, oh, we've got this location next to a graveyard. And we thought that would be a cool place for her to live. I didn't know what it looked like. And then I see it in the movie. That location is fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. And it looks great. It's so just all these little, if you will, drops of gold through the movie were just so pleasing. And also, if you don't mind, and I ain't bragging on myself, this young guy they found to do the score is great.
Yeah.
He approached Charlie apparently with a trailer for an old Full Moon movie, and he just had rescored it. And Charlie gets demo reels and things like that just by the dozens every single day. But he paid attention to this one and got a hold of this guy, and he lives in the Midwest someplace, and said, would you like to do this? And he and I were talking after the screening, and I said, my God, it was like Pino Donaggio. And that was what he wanted. That's what he said to this kid.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And the mix too in the theater. I'm so glad I got to see it in the theater because then, everything will be compressed on physical media. But wowee, the mix was just wonderful. So you guys tell me about the actresses. Who did you really like?
Oh, I thought both of them were great. I personally like just the kind of duality of Erin, not even necessarily duality, but just watching her like transform over how did the at one point you guys make like a Dr. Jekyll reference, and how did you kind of come across that like makeup idea? I thought that was really neat.
I had suggested in the script that with each Quadrant episode that Erin goes through, and as she takes on more and more of the persona of Jack the Ripper, that her face becomes kind of more masculine.
Yeah.
As if, she really is, physically transforming into this man. And but they did a little makeup on her, but she did that with her own facial expressions and everything else. And that shot of her when they open the elevator gates, she's fantastic. Now,
yeah.
Okay, Mr. Gaff here, I had only seen the trailer before I saw the movie. And so the cast was there. And that actress, who is just wonderful, to me in the trailer looked very short. This is a tall girl. And I walked into the lobby of the theater. I said, "Oh my God, you're tall." She probably thought I was some weirdo who crawled in from, God knows where. And, I'm just lucky they didn't call security. But I just thought she was so terrific. But everybody really landed well because they took what they were doing seriously. And there was nothing tongue in cheek. And again, Charlie let the scenes play out as extreme as we had planned them to be.
That's awesome.
And he could have pulled back, but he didn't.
Yep.
Yeah, there's one thing that I find fascinating, as Charlie's talked about many times, during the heyday of the slashers in the 80s, he's like, no interest, that wasn't my thing. Now this one comes up all these years, 40 years later, whatever. And now we're doing a slasher. I don't even know if you'd really call this a slasher. I guess
it's pretty close. It's about as close as Full Moon has gotten. Yeah.
But it's a very Full Moon slasher. And was that kind of in your guys' mind while pitching ideas back and forth of okay, we're going to do a slasher. We're going to do our version of doing a slasher.
No, I mean, I remember those days with because I was up for writing a lot of those movies a million years ago. But this was around the time that we did Prison. And the subject came up because that was very much the norm for a lot of horror movies. But the whole thing here with Quadrant was I didn't want it to be, and I think that's why it works with a female victimization by a man with a knife. And let's face it, I don't even consider Halloween a slasher movie, although some people say it's like the Godfather of all movies. I just think it's just a wonderful movie.
Yes,
it is. It's fantastic.
And completely separate from, Don't Go in the House or Maniac or whatever else you want to add to it. But I think, if you will, the slashing aspect of this is really just being true to Jack the Ripper. And the fact is that he used a knife.
Yeah.
And again, it's
not just no running in the woods.
And, nothing like that.
Nothing.
We're on a camping trip, and here comes somebody who's supposed to be dead 50 years ago.
Yeah, some guy in a mask. Yeah, no, not that at all.
No one gets a flat tire on a dirt road or anything.
Nope. So we've talked about a lot of movies in your career already. A question that we had: what's been a standout movie that you've worked on, looking back at it, of wow, that was something really magical, really special?
Well, I've been really lucky. I mean, I was functioning almost exclusively, in the B movie area. The bigger projects I worked on, I was either one of a zillion guys who were doing a pass on, say, something at Warner Brothers or whatever, or, whatever I did didn't get made. I think, of course, the first film, Whisper to a Scream, because that was me and Jeff Burr and Darren Scott and everybody. And it was our first adventure, and there's Vincent Price and everything. And that was very, very special, of course. And I had recently seen Prison at the Egyptian Theater about a few years ago, and some friends came with me, and I was really surprised how well the movie held up. And of course, that's what Rennie Harlan and I were living together at that time, and all that stuff. Nice. And so, I really like that movie, and I like Class of 1999 just because the cast is so great.
Yeah.
I mean,
for sure.
In the world of cult cinema, I can say I wrote a Pam Grier movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there you go.
That's amazing. Is there anyone is there any B movie or cult cinema icon that you haven't worked with yet that you would like to?
Not really.
You've worked with them all.
Well, Tim Thomerson is one of my best friends, and we've done 3 movies together, and I talk to Tim every single week, sometimes 2 and 3 times a week, and he's just a prince, and was so individualistic, I guess, in his persona. It was so different from a lot of other people who were making movies of this ilk. And he wasn't some young hunk who was going to fight Jason or something like that. Tim had his own special area, World Weary, which I always thought was so cool. And I love Jeff Combs. Jeff and I are, that was also kind of the thing, is that there was, and Charlie always fostered this, as did a lot of Mark Lester, the same thing, that there was like this community of people that very often we all would work on each other's movies, and hey, the phone would ring, and like Jeff would call me and say, hey, I'm doing this. I just saw that you had written the first draft of the script. Let's go get a beer and talk about it. That used to be very much the norm. And I'll sound like, the old man on the porch with my shotgun across my knees. But this thing I get, it's kind of weird, but I get this feeling that the fun aspect of making movies like this doesn't really seem to be there anymore. We were, and honestly, this will sound even more bizarre. You can put this on your Bizarro reel. Back when, if you're making a movie in the 90s and, for Full Moon or whoever it was, the thing is, you were making a real movie. And by that, I mean a crew of 30 people, 35 millimeter film. And, it was an entirely different feel than just doing something digitally with I don't know, even, with a camera the size of a pack of cigarettes versus one of those great Panavision jobbers, because I grew up looking at directors standing next to Panavision cameras. I wanted to be on the set of Bullet. I didn't, and that was, and I think we had that feeling when we were making those movies. And of course, it was a lot more complicated because of lab work and all the rest of it. So there were a lot more steps. But that also meant, I think, that the kind of the commitment to what you were doing had to be greater because it took more time. And again, it was all, I don't want to say it was all just, hey, one for the show, but we were all excited to be making movies in that way. I think anybody who attempts to make a movie now, no matter how easy it seems, with laptops, with editorial software already installed and all that kind of stuff, it's still, I mean, it's a hellacious job and a real mountain to climb. But and I don't want to dismiss that, but it was standing there in the middle of, Seattle, Washington, while John P. Ryan tears this kid apart. That was pretty cool.
The art of filmmaking has changed so much. Well, it's still like super difficult. Me and Sam know this from experience. No, this isn't easy. Now imagine if we had to do this with film, had to process the film and edit on film. Yeah, that's an entirely different beast altogether. And I mean, I think it's still a dream of many filmmakers nowadays to, hey, one day I want to shoot a movie on film. And I think that's still something that people who are really into film and cinema are still clamoring on.
Sure. And you have guys like Christopher Nolan, for example, and these guys are always endorsing 35, which I'm very glad that they are. And but those that, we're scrambling to get short ends, and we're, because we didn't have the, and that's the other thing too, that not just the use of film and what have you, but it did cost more.
Yeah.
And
you can run out
a lot.
You can run out. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm jealous of the ability now just to, hey, we can put something together that will actually be good. I mean, I'm astounded at some of the effects work and stuff that I see on these deals that guys put together with their friends for $2,500.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And yeah, I was like, wow, how in the world did that happen? And so that's so there's definitely a yin and a yang of it, but I don't know. I guess I miss hanging around at Bordner's Saloon in Hollywood with all of us, and we were that was a friend of mine. We were talking about those days, and he said that because so many Jeff and Darren and myself, and then later on when we got to know Scott Spiegel and all of us, and we would hang out together, and there were including Quentin, and there were like 10 of us, and two sitting around drinking beer and arguing about movies. To a person, we have all made feature films, every single one of us, and some have walked away with Academy Awards. I mean, the odds against that are pretty high.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's insane, and anytime you can make a movie, it's a miracle, and to have all of you guys together on that is that's a truly remarkable thing. And we're talking about things coming up, kind of future a little bit. We're talking a little bit of the future of the industry, because obviously everything's moved basically to the digital side of things. What does your future look like? What do you have in store? What do you have coming up? There is a movie that we know you've been in talks with Charlie to do, the returning, I guess, to the Puppet Master series. Like what does your future look like? What is next on the docket now that Quadrant is going to be released to the public?
Well, I've always been kind of jumping around back and forth. I do an awful lot of restoration work, or I should say commentary on restorations. And in fact, I just did my, I think about 230th, 240 commentary for Film Masters. And I love that because I love cinema history, and working with Daniel Griffith over at Ballyhoo. And we've done a lot of documentaries together. We just won a Rondo this year.
Nice.
So that was
congrats.
Really cool. Thank you. That was really cool. So I'm continuing with that. I've also been working on quote unquote straight documentaries. I'm working on one right now about World War II, and writing that narration and working with some terrific people. And I've got a few TV things that, are just, they're on the stove, they're bubbling. Sometimes they're overflowing. Other times they're, cold as ice.
Yeah.
But they seem to be percolating a little bit again. And so I'm happy for that. But no, I'd love to do something else with Charlie again. It's now it really is. It's working with old friends and having that sense of nostalgia and everything. And we're gonna try and recapture, I think, something when and Charlie is smart enough to know I'm not a comedy writer, so yes. So I there are other people who do that so well. I am not one of them, so he doesn't ask me to do that that stuff. But I think one of the things that happens now, whether you're working on B movies or A movies or everything in between, episodic TV, whatever it is, for writers, I think the biggest change in everything is you have to be master of all of these crafts now. Because I've written novels, but if you write novels, what's your background in comic books? If you write comic books, can you do games? There was a game based on one of my novels, Nemo Rising, that Whiz Kids did.
Mm.
Wow.
And so, and there's the feature film. Oops, can you do a documentary? How are you with animation? It just, you keep getting thrown these curveballs, and you really are expected to understand and master each one of these, genre offshoots.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that way before, but boy, now you really have to be a jack of all trades. I think so anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we've heard. We've heard that many times from people in the industry of, hey, you can't just have a screenplay for the movie. You need hey, there's a version of the TV version. Here's the video game version. Here's the comic book version. You need to have all those at your disposal. And I don't know. It's already hard enough to write a movie, let alone try to do all that other stuff too.
And Casey, you bring up a really good point, because writing a script now, if you go into a distributor or wherever it is you're going to go, the thing is, oh, all right, here's your script. Who is your attached talent? Do you have a lookbook? What casting director do you have committed? I mean, they expect the screenwriter to have done all of this stuff that essentially is like producing work.
Yeah.
And you've got to have it when you walk in and drop something on somebody's desk.
That's insane. That is insane. Yeah.
Feels like them getting free prep work out of people, honestly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That feels like a scam.
Yeah.
And, listen, the pizza for some glorious layout on for a lookbook, or please, can you do this? Can you help me with that and everything else, man? I'm on that phone to Domino's immediately. There's just no, because ultimately, if when something goes, there's just no true way, other than if you can slip your friends a couple of bucks to pay back the effort and everything else that goes into just getting to that step.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's enormous.
Yeah.
And it isn't a single person job.
Yeah. That's insane. And it's crazy to hear how the industry is going forward. And honestly, it kind of makes me feel better about stuff like the smaller people are still doing, like what Charlie's still doing with Full Moon, and what some of these other independent companies are doing of, hey, we're going to keep everything in-house. We're going to focus on what we do best. We're not going to try to make this big grand scale Marvel cinematic universe movie. We're going to keep it to what we know best. And I think that's something that the genre film has always held strong. And as we've seen in the box office in 2024, it's something that's still holding on to, hey, that's what people want to see. And what's still working in modern movies.
Well, it's like when our friend won the Academy Award this past year for Best Screenplay, and he said it right there in his acceptance speech. Let's make $10 million movies instead of one for $180 million.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just insane. Like, the amount of money that is spent on one movie anymore is just, it's gargantuan. It makes no sense to me. None whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, that's why we appreciate people like yourself, Courtney. We truly appreciate the work that you've done your entire career and have entertained us for many, many, many years on your work, and we hope you continue to do so. And I know you guys have with Quadrant. Had an absolute blast with that movie. As we're recording this and as this episode drops, the movie is out right now. You can get it. I think Charlie basically said it's like on everything all at once is how they're dropping
physical media and streaming all at one time.
Yes, that's
awesome.
So cool. One more question before we let you go. It's our favorite one to leave people off with. I think we're going to get a really fun answer here because you are a movie buff like us. We always love double features, and so if someone's going to watch Quadrant, what movie would you pair with Quadrant to watch right after for the perfect double feature?
I don't want anything that's going to make us look bad. and well, kind of following in the footsteps of the era and everything else, I would say watch Quadrant and then go Terrence Fisher, 1960s. Go to Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll or The Revenge of Frankenstein.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
I love that.
That is two fun double features for people to do right afterwards. That's a great picks. Yes.
Yes. Awesome.
Well, Courtney, thank you again so much for taking time out to talk with us. This has been an absolute blast, an absolute pleasure. Where can people follow you online?
Well, I mean, I used to have a website, but I got too lazy to keep it up to date. So, I mean, I'm on Facebook, and that's where I'm primarily, nosing around and trying to promote new things, which, by the way, yes. One thing that's coming up that fits in with, what you guys are doing, Videotapes from Hell, edited by Stephen Jones, is the third installment in the Art of Horror series, those beautiful large coffee table books.
Yep.
And it is all original artwork for VHS boxes.
Nice.
Amazing.
That's so cool.
It's great. And I wrote a chapter. Stephen King wrote a chapter. Hey.
Yeah.
Mick Garris, Peter Atkins, a whole bunch of us contributed to this thing. And it's just gorgeous. And just such a cool, fun idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that comes out on the 1st of October.
Awesome.
Nice.
Well, that is so cool. That is definitely going to be on our coffee tables at some point. Yeah, that's awesome. That is so awesome. Again, Quadrant out right now. Courtney Joyner, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for tuning in to the Screens from the Basement podcast with Sam and Casey.
Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok.
You can subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, and if you want the video portion, you can subscribe to us on YouTube as well.
Pick up exclusive Screams from the Basement merch, including shirts, hats, totes, and so much more on our TeePublic store.
You can use our Fangoria affiliate link for all of your Fango needs. You can use that to buy any magazines, t-shirts, and anything else Fangoria related on their website. Please visit shop.fangoria.com/Screens from the Basement and use promo code Screens from the Basement to save yourself 20%. And thanks for tuning in.
And sweet screams.
You're listening to the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, home to hundreds of hours of free podcast entertainment. The shows on this network all have a common goal: providing you with the best discussions about movies and other forms of entertainment media. The PFPN hopes to fill your earholes with audio joy. Visit our website with links to all the other amazing shows at www.thepfpn.com. Thanks for listening.